Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, you guys asked for it in the biggest way possible, so I'm going to sit here and make this crazy asinine video that I know is going to cause a shitstorm in the comments section, so hopefully cooler heads will prevail by the end of it. And just a quick check-in on the Social Blade page here. You guys shaved off an entire 2 days on when we're expected to hit 1,000 subs here on the channel. So thank you very much for that. And if we could continue doing that and beat the Social Blade projection, the original projection to 1,000 subscribers was July 1st. So I think that we just need to just jump right into this video. If I'm not saying it will happen or I want it to happen, if the Toronto Maple Leafs were to explore trading one of the big four players, so Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander, which one should it be and why? As always, time codes are down in the description of this video. So why are we talking about this? First, because a lot of people seem to be under the impression that the Toronto Maple Leafs cannot afford to pay William Nylander, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, Austin Matthews almost near $40 million combined. A lot of people think that it's an unsustainable model and it's not the way to build a hockey team. And I've always made the argument that yes, the Maple Leafs can afford to pay these players that amount of money. They just have to use them accordingly, right? If we take a look at Connor McDavid in Edmonton playing 21 minutes and 52 seconds a night, and then Leon Draisaitl playing 22 minutes and 37 seconds a night, and then Austin Matthews 20:58 and John Tavares 19:33. For the Maple Leafs, two top paid players, they should be getting more ice time. But it's also the type of ice time that these players are getting, right? And what I have here on the screen is an allotment of power play time showing how much Austin Matthews spends on the Maple Leafs power play when they actually do get a power play. He spent 227 minutes of the available 328 this season, equating to about 69%. Normally a nice number, but when you compare it to Alexander Ovechkin, Ovechkin spends about 85% of all Washington power plays on the ice. And when you consider that Alex Ovechkin's played over 100 more minutes on the power play, but still only has one more power play goal this season than Austin Matthews, yeah, the Leafs should probably play Austin Matthews more on the power play. Especially when you consider what a mess the second power play unit has been for Toronto for the last year or two. I thought it would be important to include that context before I started talking about each individual player, Matthews, Nylander, Marner, and Tavares, and why we should or should not trade them. And just to include some quick advanced analytics from evolvinghockey.com or Evolving Wild on Twitter here, this is from the first two seasons that all these players have played together, including the William Nylander holdout season when he was terrible in terms of expected goals above replacement. And you're going to see some breakdowns between even strength offense, even strength defense, power play output, shorthanded output, and the differential in the penalties that they take or draw. And some things that we can take away just at a glance from these advanced metrics is that the gap between William Nylander and Mitch Marner is not all that big. I do think that Mitch Marner is better than William Nylander, but probably not as much as their pay gap suggests. Another thing that we can take away at a quick glance here is that none of these guys really play defense. But if you were to look at their offensive numbers and their defensive numbers on a graph that would extend into the negative, the positive, so their offensive output heavily outweighs the defensive woes that would show in the negatives. And also, the final thing that we can take away from looking at this is how criminally underrated Austin Matthews is. And I know that people outside of Toronto or non-Leaf fans would find that an outrageous thing to say, but I think that people are afraid to actually compare him to the other players in our league out of fear of being called a homer. And I mean, I'm not afraid to do that. So if you guys want a video of me stacking up Austin Matthews and where he compares in this league, just let me know down in the comment section because I will happily tell you how amazing Austin Matthews is. But the first of the four that I want to talk about is William Nylander because I think it's just the quickest one that we can just brush out of the way because I think that people that are still suggesting that the Maple Leafs trade this guy are just, they've missed the boat. But I want you guys to pay attention to the cap hit percentage here, 8.76%. And basically, when William Nylander signed that contract, that's how much of the pie that he was taking up for the Toronto Maple Leafs that season. And when we go over here, cap hit percentage here, 11.3% for Nicholas Backstrom is the percentage of the cap that $6.7 million took up at the time when he signed that deal. And I took myself off the screen here, but William Nylander is 25th on this list. And when you're looking at the players on this list, these are William Nylander's peers in terms of just strictly his contract. And when you're looking at the players on this list, how many guys can you definitively say are 100% better than William Nylander? Patrice Bergeron, Vladimir Tarasenko, David Pastrnak. Then it kind of gets a little bit hairy after that, and I gotta say, William Nylander is 100% definitively better than most of the guys on this list. I mean, Bobby Ryan, David Krejci, Taylor Hall, Jordan Staal, Ryan Kessler, Evander Kane, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Dustin Brown, Derek Stepan, Ryan Callahan, Kevin Hayes, Travis Zajac, James Van Riemsdyk. I mean, come on. And the beautiful thing about William Nylander's contract is that it's all in the prime of his career. He'll be 28 years old by the time this contract expires. And when you're looking at William Nylander this season, he was on pace to score 37 goals and 71 points, and that's impressive in its own right, but it's the way that he was doing it that's so impressive. You know, I've been watching The Last Dance on Netflix, the Michael Jordan documentary, and by far one of the most badass moments in that entire documentary is after Magic Johnson retires, he's on an ESPN panel, and he's going off about how MJ can't hit threes. Michael Jordan overhears Magic Johnson saying this and then promptly sets the NBA playoff record for the most three-pointers in a game. Now, I'm not comparing William Nylander to Michael Jordan by any means necessary, but William Nylander was thought to be a perimeter player for a very long time, right? He makes his money on the outer walls, kind of like Phil Kessel did. And come playoff time, you know, there's no room for soft perimeter players like that. You need to play nitty-gritty hockey in front of the net. And if we take a look at where William Nylander's shots have come this season, well, the majority of them have come from in front of the net, not on the outer walls like a lot of people were saying. But if we take a look at these visuals of William Nylander this season, you're going to see this even more, with him taking 38% of his shots from the inner slot area and 20% of his shots from right in front of the net, compared to the league average of 23% and 13% respectively. Even the goals that he's scored this season, 41% from the inner slot area, 38% of his goals right in front of the net, compared to the league average of 41% and 22% respectively. I still do think that he has more to give defensively, and especially in the neutral zone in transition from offense to defense, but he's definitely progressing at a rate that I think most fans can be happy with. And again, like I showed on that list, a very affordable player when looking at other guys around the NHL. Now, back when I made the video calling out people that wanted John Tavares never signed in the first place, traded, or even bought out, a lot of people told me that I needed to change the circle of Leaf fans that I was hanging around, because that's the vast minority. But I'm still seeing in the comments section over the last 5 or 6 videos, as the ones that have gotten more views pile up, that people are still suggesting that John Tavares needs to go. And the one thing that I want to remind everyone is that this season, John Tavares only missed 6 games, so about 2 or 3 weeks or so, due to a broken finger. And he wasn't 100% when he came back. But a lot of people had problems with John Tavares, specifically in February and in March. Well, in the Maple Leafs' last 20 games or so, John Tavares was 30th in the NHL in terms of points, and just 2 points behind Nathan MacKinnon in 60 less minutes played. But I didn't hear anyone complaining about Nathan MacKinnon in Colorado. 19 points in his last 20 games in the middle of a cold streak, apparently. And don't worry, I beat you to it before you can leave it down in the comments. Yeah, well, we don't pay John Tavares to be 30th in the NHL in terms of scoring at any point in the season. He is the 6th highest paid player in the league. He's got a higher cap hit than Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin. Well, not really, because if you sort it by cap hit percentage, like I talked about earlier with William Nylander, John Tavares goes from being the 6th highest paid player in the league to really the 13th highest paid player in the league. And is John Tavares a top 13 player in the league? Maybe not. Is he a top 15 or a top 20 player? For sure. Now, the next player that we're going to be talking about here just coincidentally happens to be right below John Tavares on this list, and that's Mitch Marner. Now, at 13.4% of the salary cap, I don't think that it's a hot take to say that Mitch Marner is a little bit overpaid. I think that he slots in so much better on this list between 27th and 32nd. So Nikita Kucherov and Leon Draisaitl somewhere between 11 and 12% of the salary cap. And if Mitch Marner would have signed a deal with a cap hit percentage of between 11 and 12%, the salary cap this season, the year that he signed the deal, is at $81.5 million. So that gives us a range of $8.97 million to $9.78 million. And that would have provided the Leafs with anywhere between $1.1 million to $1.92 million more in cap space. I mean, let's say the Toronto Maple Leafs do decide to trade Travis Dermott and they eventually end up dealing Andreas Johnsson. They could move forward next season with a roster very similar to this with $3.666 million, so it's cursed. So that's how you know that it's perfect for the Maple Leafs. It's cursed, it's perfect for the Leafs. They could have $3.66 million to add another defenseman to this defensive core. Now, if I have to be honest with you, I mean, if we're just being realistic about this, John Tavares has a full no movement clause, so he's not going absolutely anywhere, and I don't think that he should to begin with. William Nylander, I don't think that the Maple Leafs can afford to trade a guy like him, considering the amount of money that he's making and the amount of goal-scoring production that he's given them this year. Austin Matthews, I am not even entertaining that. You are certifiably insane if it even crossed your mind once to think that they should do that. The guy that I will entertain offers on, but probably not trading him unless you can relieve the full amount of cap space, is Mitch Marner. And it pains me to say that, but the only way that I'm trading Mitch Marner is if I can clear his entire cap hit, or the players that I'm getting back are players that I'm absolutely in love with for their contracts and their play on the ice. I know that Mitch Marner was once linked to the Columbus Blue Jackets. They wanted to offer shoot him on a 7-year deal, but he wasn't going to accept that. The only way that he was going to accept an offer sheet from them would be on a 3-year deal, and at that point, they determined it too much of a risk, and they walked away from the situation. So maybe Columbus would have interest in him in a trade, and then people start suggesting guys like Seth Jones coming back in a trade, and it's just like, it is tempting. However, how unrealistic it sounds, it is tempting to at least think about it. And if you came back over to this armchair GM, if you were to just trade Mitch Marner, you would have $14.5 million to find a player to replace him in the top 6 and then go out and seriously upgrade the defense. But I don't necessarily know that trading any one of these 4 guys is a solution. The team would be different. I don't know if it would be better necessarily. You'd be splitting the pie differently, but again, I think that that's just the difference in philosophy, just differing opinions on how to build the hockey team. I don't necessarily think that the team would be better. The team would definitely be different, but better is an entirely different question. That's a wait and see thing. And I'm also not really in the business of trading away guys that are 22, 23, or 24, respectively. And the John Tavares contract is not a problem. Like I've said on this channel a bunch of times, by the time it expires, he'll be 33 years old, turning 34. It's not the same as if the St. Louis Blues were to re-sign Alex Pietrangelo, or the Maple Leafs were to go after Alex Pietrangelo. On a 7 or 8 year deal, Alex Pietrangelo is going to be 37 or 38 at the end of it. Very different than 33 turning 34. And also, I've said this in a previous video before, and I kind of blew up when I said it, but damn it, I want to win with the guys that they told us we were going to win with. No more of this bullshitting around. No more of this playing games and moving pieces. No. You told us that we were going to win with these guys. You had a plan for years. You altered the plans along the way to include John Tavares. Stick with this plan. See it through to the end. All right, the anniversary of Toronto blowing that Game 7 to Boston, the first one, the one from 2013, the anniversary of it was a couple of days ago, and that would mark 7 years. And there's a couple of things that we can learn from that team. Because if you're not learning from past events, you're just not doing it right. I can understand how there are some things in hockey and in life especially. You just need to learn for yourself, but this is not a bullet that we need to take. All right, Dave Nonis in the 2013 offseason did some things that would screw up the Toronto Maple Leafs for years to come. He let Clark MacArthur walk to a divisional rival. He bought out Mikhail Grabovski from a contract that he probably shouldn't have been signed to in the first place. He traded for Jonathan Bernier, even though James Reimer was the reason why they even got into the playoffs in the first place. He traded several picks for Dave Bolland, and while Dave Bolland was good and the Toronto Maple Leafs did win with him in the lineup, didn't work out in the short term, probably wasn't the best investment to invest in a guy that was only going to be here for a year anyway before he signed a monstrous deal with the Florida Panthers and is now on the Arizona Coyotes as just an LTIR thing. He signed David Clarkson as well. He had his 4 or 5 days, and it really transformed the team, and it set them up to collapse again the next season because they didn't address any of the actual needs. Well, actually, I take that back. Acquiring Dave Bolland wasn't all too bad because after they bought out Mikhail Grabovski, getting Dave Bolland in to replace him gave the Maple Leafs a 1-2-3 punch of Tyler Bozak, Nazem Kadri, and Dave Bolland, and it was effective until Dave Bolland was injured in pretty much just like a freak accident. It was basically the same thing that happened to Karlsson, where he had a lacerated Achilles tendon. But letting Clark MacArthur walk to a divisional rival because Randy Carlyle benched him in the playoffs, letting Leo Komarov go back to Russia or Estonia or Finland or Sweden, wherever he's from, was a mistake then because Randy Carlyle benched him too. Bringing in David Clarkson, bringing in Jonathan Bernier, all reactionary moves that were awful for that team. Alexander Steen had 4 points in his first 20 games to start the 2008-2009 season, and then he was dealt to St. Louis in a deal that also included another former first-round pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs and current TSN personality, I guess, Carlo Koliakovo, that got them Lee Stepniak. And Lee Stepniak hung around here for a cup of coffee or so, and then he said sayonara because this team sucks and the management doesn't know what it's doing. Alexander Steen went on to have almost 500 points in 765 games with the St. Louis Blues, a reactionary move that did not pay off. So just because things haven't gone in the Maple Leafs' favor for the last couple of years with this core, I don't think that they need to blow it up and make a reactionary move like that. Especially this season when it really wasn't their fault to begin with. I like to split this season up into 3 different sections. The first 23 games that were coached by Mike Babcock, where the team went 9-10-4, and then the first 20 games under Sheldon Keefe, where the team went 15-4-1, and the parade route was being planned, and then the next allotment of games where the Maple Leafs went 12-11-4, and everyone and their mother was injured, and that started on January 6th when Connor McDavid dangled the pants off of Morgan Riley. And if you want to take a closer look at that 12-11-4 run by the Maple Leafs from January 6th onwards, we could just take a look at the goaltending numbers between that time, where Frederik Andersen promptly posted an .892 save percentage at 5-on-5, so that's not even including the penalty kill. Look, I get that the Maple Leafs had a lot of injuries going on at the time and whatever, but .892 at 5-on-5 is unacceptable. That is not the team defense. That is Frederik Andersen. All right, don't try to tell me that James Reimer can post a save percentage of .924 in front of the 12-13 Maple Leafs, but Frederik Andersen can't post one at 5-on-5 above .900 in front of these Maple Leafs. There's no way that these Maple Leafs right now, even with all the injuries that they had, were worse defensively than that 12-13 team. I'm sorry, it's just not happening. You're not convincing me. I'm still under the impression that this is probably the best roster that the Maple Leafs can compile for the start of this upcoming year. Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren starting the year in the minors would pave way to still keep Travis Dermott around and still have $3 million or so in cap space to go out there and upgrade. That creates depth. Because maybe by the trade deadline, or maybe even sooner than then, Rasmus Sandin forces your hand and he says, hey, I need to be in the NHL full-time and I need to be on your power play. Then you have a situation where you have too many good players, or you have too many NHL quality defensemen, and that's not a problem, especially when Rasmus Sandin can be shuttled up and down as many times as the Toronto Maple Leafs want to. Then you have an NHL quality player that's an asset to your team mid-season that you can use in maybe a package trade with a prospect or another pick to upgrade your team even further. I don't think that the second and the third, or the third and the fourth round pick that Travis Dermott would fetch would be enticing enough for the Toronto Maple Leafs to even explore the idea of trading him. Just start the season with Sandin in the minors and go from there. They were already healthy scratching him for certain games and benching him for an entire period at a time at points, so what's the big deal? With the landscape of the NHL and the economy of things, I don't think that you can responsibly make a trade with one of those big four guys. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying not this offseason. And that's going to frustrate some people, but you don't just blow up a business plan that you've had for the last couple of years now in favor of a reactionary move. We got to allow for some more time to pass and let cooler heads prevail here. And I'm serious, the reason why I didn't even talk about Auston Matthews as a legitimate option to trade in this video is because it's certifiably insane. Anyone who's suggesting that is so far out of left field, it's not funny. And if you guys want me to make the video just explaining how amazing Auston Matthews has been since he's entered the NHL, I will do it, because I have no problem sitting here and doing the research for something like that, because guy's just friggin' unbelievable. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and make sure to leave me a like on this video if you did like it, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, cooler heads will prevail.